The sound comes first. A small metallic click, then the faint hiss as air breaks the seal. A dull pink loaf slides from the can, trembling slightly in its own gelatin. For some, that sound meant comfort. For others, it meant war. But for millions, it simply meant dinner. In the quiet kitchens of 1940s America, that sound echoed across the country. It was heard in factory towns, in farmhouses, in soldiers' tents overseas. It was the sound of Spam, cheap, humble, and utterly reliable. By then the world had already changed. Men had gone to war, families learned to make do with less, and food, even food from a can, carried a kind of dignity. It wasn't a feast, it wasn't luxury, but it was survival, sealed in tin and memory.
Long before that familiar blue can appeared, there was a man named George Hormel. He came from Chicago's slaughterhouses, hard, bloody work where every part of an animal found a use. In 1891, he left the city and settled in Austin, Minnesota. There he opened a small packing plant bearing his name. The early Hormel company sold anything that could keep a family fed: sausage, dried meats, hides, eggs. Through the years of the First World War, business grew steady. By the 1920s, George had built a company that could endure bad harvests and long winters. Then came his son, Jay. A soldier returned from France, carrying both discipline and new ideas. When he opened the company's books, he found trouble. An accountant named Cy Thompson had been stealing for a decade, over $1 million gone. It could have ruined them. Instead, it forced change. Jay took the reins and looked to the future. He believed that food, like industry itself, could be modern. He began sealing meats in cans, locking freshness behind tin and paper labels. By 1926, the company released America's first canned ham. It was practical, durable, and safe, perfect for a nation still learning to trust machinery over markets. Then came the Depression. The 1930s hit every kitchen table. Families stretched every meal, every penny, every ounce of faith in tomorrow. Jay saw the same question everywhere: how to feed a family when the world is running out of money. He looked again at what was left over in his own factories. Pork shoulder, unwanted by butchers, slow to cook, rich but ignored. It was the cut no one wanted, and so it became his beginning. In 1936, Jay Hormel decided to turn waste into worth. He ground the pork shoulder fine, mixed it with salt, sugar, and a touch of nitrate for color and preservation. He cooked it once, then sealed it in the can to cook again under pressure. When cooled, the meat held its shape: square, firm, dependable. Now he needed a name. He couldn't call it canned ham. It wasn't. He couldn't call it pork mash. That was honest, but not inviting. So, on a cold New Year's Eve, Jay threw a party. Friends, executives, and their families came to his house. He offered them drinks and a game. Every time you wanted another cocktail, you had to suggest a name for his new product. As the night grew louder, the list grew stranger. Then, among the laughter and the clinking of glasses, a local actor named Kenneth Dagno wrote one simple word: Spam. No one quite knew what it meant. Some said it stood for spiced ham. Others thought it meant shoulder of pork and ham. Jay never confirmed either. He just liked the sound. He handed Kenneth $100 and said, "That's it." On July 5, 1937, the first cans of Spam appeared on American shelves. The campaign that followed was relentless. Radios sang its praises. Spam, Spam, Spam! Hormel's miracle meat in a can! Magazines showed it fried, baked, diced, or eaten cold. Recipes filled women's pages and grocery flyers. Before Spam, only a small fraction of Americans ate canned meat. By 1940, nearly 70% did. It was cheap, fast, and it never spoiled. For many, it became a quiet symbol of progress, food made by science, not by chance. Then came the war. In 1941, President Roosevelt signed the Lend-Lease Act. America would feed its allies, Britain, Russia, and anyone fighting the Axis. But the food had to survive the journey. It had to travel months across oceans, through heat, through loss. Spam fit perfectly. No refrigeration, no preparation. Just open, slice, and eat. In the Soviet Union, they called it Roosevelt sausage. Nikita Khrushchev would later write, "Without Spam, we could not have fed our army." In Britain, it was both a blessing and a curse. For families who had seen meat vanish from the butcher's block, Spam was salvation. But after years of the same meal, even hunger grew tired. Newspapers joked of a world weary of Spam, yet they kept eating it. For most, there was no choice. And then the soldiers. American troops carried it everywhere, from Europe to the Pacific. Cans filled rucksacks, trenches, and mess tents. They fried it for breakfast, sliced it for lunch, and cursed it for dinner. Some called it special army meat. Others joked it was a ham that failed its physical. But even those who complained ate every bite. Because Spam, like war itself, was inescapable. By the end of 1943, Hormel had supplied over 150 million pounds of it, and whether it came from Hormel or from companies copying the formula, the soldiers called it all the same thing: Spam. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't delicious, but it kept men alive. And when the ships left the beaches and the bases fell silent, Spam stayed behind. In the islands of the Pacific, Spam became part of life. When Guam was retaken in 1944, the U.S. military fed the Chamorro people from its own supply lines. Cans of Spam became daily meals, fried with rice, mixed with local herbs, folded into family dishes. After the war, the bases remained, and so did the taste. Today, Guam eats more Spam per person than anywhere on Earth. It spread farther still. In the Philippines, it arrived in 1945 and stayed for good, in breakfasts called Spam Silog with eggs and rice, eaten by generations who had never known the war itself. In Okinawa, Japan, 7 million cans a year. Even a mascot named Spammy-kun waves from parades. And in Hawaii, Spam took on a meaning of its own. Before the war, most Hawaiian fishermen were Japanese. When the U.S. restricted their licenses, the islands lost much of their fresh fish. Protein vanished from the diet until Spam filled the gap. It became comfort food, not rations. The taste of adaptation. To this day, locals eat Spam musubi, a slice of grilled Spam resting on rice wrapped in seaweed. Every year, Honolulu holds the Spam Jam, a festival of memory and salt. Then came another war, Korea, 1950. The country was starving. Spam arrived again, first as aid, then as currency.
It appeared in black markets, sold for prices only the wealthy could afford. In a time of shortage, it became luxury. Koreans gave it as gifts, wrapped in golden boxes beside fine oils. And in their kitchens, they built something new, budae jjigae, the army stew. A pot of noodles, kimchi, mushrooms, and tofu mixed with spam and cheese left by American troops. It was improvisation turned into tradition. And like the people who made it, it endured. Through all this, spam never changed. The world did. From necessity to nostalgia. From rations to recipes. The little blue can followed history wherever hunger went. In the decades that followed, spam took on a second life, as joke, as relic, as memory. Comedians mocked it. Monty Python turned it into song. Spam, spam, lovely spam, they sang, until the word itself became a metaphor for everything unwanted. Even computers borrowed it, calling endless messages spam, the same way wartime diners once called endless meat the same. And yet, the can never left the shelves. It sits there still, in quiet defiance of taste and trend. In Austin, Minnesota, there is a museum built in its honor. Inside, a timeline of the world told through tin and salt. Through the years, new flavors appeared: teriyaki, jalapeno, maple, even pumpkin spice. But for most, the classic remains: pork, salt, sugar, and memory. For some, it's a symbol of the past they'd rather forget. For others, it's the taste of survival, a reminder of what fed them when nothing else could. And maybe that's what makes spam endure. Not its flavor, not its fame, but the simple truth it carries, that in hard times, even the smallest thing can mean enough. When the can opens, the sound is the same. A quiet click, a hiss of air, and a memory sealed inside, waiting to be remembered.